When you got started in 2014, what was the opening that you saw in the market?
In 2014, I was working at Salesforce. I was running marketing at Pardot at that time, and Pardot was acquired by ExactTarget. ExactTarget got acquired by Salesforce, so therefore I was at Salesforce. And I remember this very clearly, where we had like the best numbers we possibly could in number of leads that we created for the company. And I remember the head of sales coming to me and saying, "Well, that was awesome, Sangram. What you and your team did for the business is phenomenal." And he asked me a question that made me like literally sunk in my own seat, literally. And I was like, "Yeah, man, I'm so excited. Really good. The team is doing great. I think we're going to do some good things this year and above." And he said, "Well, can you generate 3,000 more leads every single month starting next month?" And I sank in my seat, man, because I was like, dude, why are we not talking about pipeline velocity? Why are we not talking about a better conversion rate? Why are we not talking about expansion? Why do we need more leads? I literally felt like I was a coin operated lead machine. And my whole value that day, I was so high, like, we hit every number there was, to like so low in the same day. And I felt like there got to be a better way to do this, where marketers are not looked upon as a coin operated lead machine, but they can drive revenue and business outcomes. So that was the genesis of the problem that I saw in the market, was a perception of what marketing did in B2B. And I thought there got to be a better way, that led to the whole idea of ABM and FlipMyFunnel movement and such.
So in your first year, you already did like 1 million in revenue. So what was the product that you were selling in your year one?
First year was crazy. I think it was more about the movement than the product, quite frankly, because we started this thing called Flip My Funnel, and anybody listening to this can do research on it. Over the last five years or so of the company, there were like 100,000 people in the community of Flip My Funnel, and we started with this idea that, well, there got to be a better way, and the better way has to be a different way of seeing the market. Excuse me. So you think about the old funnel, which is broad at the top and narrow at the bottom. We just flipped it and called it Flip My Funnel. And in the first year, we did 4 events in 4 different cities. So Atlanta, San Francisco, Boston, Chicago, I think probably 5, Austin as well. And we went along all these cities with the top thought leaders in the marketplace around B2B marketing and sales, asking people and talking about, like, we got to challenge the status quo of marketing and sales. There has to be a better way to do these things. What is it? And we didn't say we have the answer, but we were the one curating this conversation. So that brought in analysts to come to this event. It brought in media to check out what's going on. We even brought in some of the competitors who were starting to talk about account-based marketing at that time at the same event. So it all of a sudden became an industry event. And because it became an industry event, a lot of people were like, well, if they're believing in this problem so much, they must have a better solution. So they would ask us. The inbound was crazy. Quite frankly, our inbound was off the charts. We were not even doing outbound calls at that time, because the first year, every time we'll do an event, we'll probably close about 30 or 40 deals, because people will come and ask about, like, hey, yes, you're right. That's the problem. I hate the funnel. I wish there was a better funnel. How do you guys do it? And what we were selling at that time was an advertising product, where we're saying we can target your best fit accounts through advertising. The whole first year, what led to our $1 million growth was literally a great point of view that was about challenging the status of marketing and sales, a clear picture of success, which was the flip funnel, and a timing where everyone felt frustrated about how marketers are treated and thought about. And all of that all came together in that one year.
How does Flip My Funnel jam with account-based marketing, and how did you come up with that terminology?
The flip my funnel is really interesting. It's one of those where, as a marketer, when we started Terminus, I wanted to do a Terminus event, like most marketers do and want to do. Is, hey, we have arrived, and you want to show off all the things that you do as marketing. And I quickly realized every time I would say, all right, we're going to do a marketing event and it will be sponsored by Terminus or hosted by Terminus, nobody wanted to sponsor it. Nobody really wanted to do anything with it. And I was like, okay, if nobody's sponsoring, there's no way we're going to drive this event forward. So I was on a flight from San Francisco, and a long story short, I was drawing this flipped funnel. I came from a conference. It was a Martech conference run by Scott Brinker in 2015, and I drew on a literally piece of napkin a flipped funnel. Like, what if the way people thought about marketing and sales was different? What if it was flipped? And that led to the idea of Flip My Funnel. So as soon as I landed, I bought the domain Flip My Funnel for $8 and wrote a blog post on LinkedIn, and that really went viral in a sense in 2015 timeframe. And that led to the conversation where everybody said, "Oh, that's a great idea. I wish somebody was doing an event together." So we just said, "All right, well, instead of calling it a Terminus event, what if we called it the Flip My Funnel event?" So we moved all of our time and energy of building a Flip My Funnel conference, and all of a sudden, all the same people, the sponsors who wouldn't want to sponsor a Terminus event, wanted to sponsor a Flip My Funnel event. And here's what I learned: people really want to be behind a movement. They want to be behind a problem. They don't want to be behind a product as such, because they don't know if the product is going to work or not. But you put a problem in front of them, you create a movement for them. People want to be part of that. And ABM is the output of a strategy called Flip My Funnel. It's like, if you flip the funnel where you start with the best fit accounts and you go after them, you will have better results. It was emotional view of like, that's how it should be. Why are we not doing that? And ABM became a way of creating an output for it. So it goes hand in hand. It was a strategy. It was a clear picture of success more so than anything.
The phrase account-based marketing, you came across it sometime in the 90s, or at least you found somebody inventing it a while ago, and then you hopped on this term. And how? Tell me about that. How did you land on it, and why did you decide to adopt it?
In the early days, we didn't call it that. We called it account based advertising internally, because that was our product. Was an advertising product. So we called it account based advertising, but we never marketed it as account based advertising, because we didn't know what else we were going to have, but we did know that it's going to be more than advertising. So we called it account based marketing, specifically so that it gives us room to grow. And as a result of that, it allowed us to do like 5 acquisitions in the last 7-8 years of our existence, is because it allowed us to grow into marketing. It allowed us to grow into customer needs. We didn't know what it will be, but we did know, for whatever reason at that point, we had that internal gut feeling that account-based advertising will niche us into an advertising platform. While and that's where we are today, that's not what our vision is. Our vision was to build a greater strategy where marketers don't have to be at the mercy of leads. They need to be able to drive business outcomes and revenue. So if that's what they need to do, then marketing needs to have a bigger conversation and a better seat at the table. So that's what we call it account-based marketing. So we are so grateful that we had that hindsight vision on calling it bigger than what it was. A lot of companies, I think, get too niche too quick, and therefore they lose the opportunity to grow. That can be really hard. And the reality is, if you position yourself too quickly, too narrow, it is really hard for you to then position yourself too broad too quickly. So it's an art and science, and I think we were at the right place at the right time in many ways.
So you were an account-based advertising product. Your vision was up here, where you wanted to be an account-based marketing product. You decided to acquire a number of companies along the way instead of building it in house. Why?
Oh man, it's a great question. Some of them was great idea, some of that wasn't great, because all the things that comes. And the reality is, the first company we bought, Right Funnel, what was interesting about that was we were doing account-based advertising ourselves, and we had hundreds of our customers for doing account-based advertising. But towards the time they were about to renew, they would say and ask this question: hey, this is great, the product works amazing, we're able to target all the right accounts, but I don't know how to show ROI of this. And that tells, like, there's red flags all over, right? If you can't show ROI, you're going to have churn issue, and they're not going to renew. And so we ourselves started to investigate, what do we do to help companies and marketers figure out to show ROI to their boss? Well, we started to use this product called Bright Funnel to do that, because until that point, every single analytics tool only demonstrated funnels in terms of leads, and nobody really was giving an account-based approach or account-based and analytics. So we used to use Bright Funnel, and we are like, man, this is so good. We had an internal conversation with our board around, like, look, we can go build what they build. It will take us 6 years, because that time Bright Funnel was 6 years old. It's at least going to take 4 to 6 years to build that. Or we can figure out a way to just acquire that company and fast forward our roadmap way ahead of it. Somehow all the stars aligned and we were able to do that. But that was the reason we were listening to our customers, knowing that it's greater than account-based advertising, which is why when we called it account-based marketing, acquiring Bright Funnel only meant that now we have account-based analytics, and we can have account based later on email signatures. Then we had account based later on inside graph that allowed people to see intent data. So all of these allowed us to grow to support the vision of having and doing everything account based, but allowed us to grow and gave us room in marketing and different levels of it.
So when you were acquiring these companies, did you use the VC money you had raised to to fund it, or was your revenue growing? Was it a mix?
It was majority of it we acquired based on our equity. Pretty much, we gave equity to most of the companies we acquired, because and obviously some VC money, but not a whole lot. The interesting thing about early stage company, we were still, I think we acquired Bright Funnel when we were into our third year as a business. So in 3 years, and Bright Funnel was there for 6 years. So we were acquiring a company that was older than us, had more people than us at one point, and had raised way more money than us. But for some reason, they were not doing so well in their business results, and their outcomes were not that great. So we were able to trade equity, because they could see that we are going to be a bigger company in a matter of time, and they're not going to be able to keep that. So trading equity would actually give all of them better chance of having a better outcome than what they would have got for their own company at that time. And that was really interesting. Like, again, we learned along the way. We didn't know all these things. When you start the company, you don't even think about this stuff. But as it came about, it's like, whoa, now the same equity that they have, when we give them equity in Terminus, their value of that equity has just quadrupled, because Terminus valuation is way higher than there. So we were able to trade a lot of this on equity. Some of that was on a little bit of cash, but our equity really did most of the talking.
So this was year three. In the early days, you mentioned you really grew on the back of demand generation, events, FlipMyFunnel, podcast, and then eventually also you wrote a book. What else was working for you back then in terms of marketing and acquiring customers?
That's a great question. At that time, I think majority of our marketing was one person, and her name is well, she is still Nikki. She ran and it was pretty much running events. Flip My Funnel, 4 or 5 events a year, running events and community activities through Flip My Funnel, running the podcast called Flip. So all of our demand generation was really this community that we were building, and even though it was a community, we were able to benefit from it because we were very authentic around the way we went about. We never made it a Terminus community. We just kept it independent and focused on it independently. What also I think worked was this idea that as we went on a road show, I don't know how many people think about this. A lot of times the events that companies do are all about them. And in the process, the customers start feeling like, well, what's in it for me? I know you're saying that your product is the most awesome product ever created since the slice of bread. I get it. What about me? And I think what we did from day one that was unique, and I feel really grateful for Nikki and the team that ran it, is because it was always about the community. So we literally did events and said, here are the topics, choose the speakers, choose the topics you want. We created awards that worked really well. Like if you talk about building a category, one of the most important things one should do is build awards. So we created awards for ABMers called ABMEs. And for 5 straight years, we have been running the ABM awards, ABMEs, at the conference. Another thing we did was every year we will put together, and we've been doing it for like I think 7 years in a row, the state of ABM, that allowed us to talk about what's happening, have a clear point of view on the marketplace, and gave the world, here's where the market is moving. So we kind of own the narrative around account based marketing. So a combination of events, combination of awards, state of ABM podcast, it was all Flip My Funnel. It was all about the community. And that literally gave us the arms and legs to grow further in our business.
So you guys, a category creator, but whenever there's money, other players will flock to it too. So over time, you weren't the only game in town. Like big, well-funded competitor, Six Sense and beyond. So what was your competitive strategy like?
Oh, we embrace that. I mean, I've always said there is no such thing as category of one. So if you hear anybody say, we really don't have any competitors, very it's extremely a bad argument, because if that's the case, then you probably shouldn't be in the business. Like that just means that nobody really wants it. If people wanted what you have, then there will be more people. If people are flying, there will be more airlines. Like it just makes sense. Like it can't be that you just have one airline and say, oh, because no people don't fly. Like that makes sense. So I'm very apprehensive with founders that I advise and boards that I'm on when they say, well, we really don't have any competitors. It's a bad thing. That means you are in the wrong place, not in a good place. So having competitors is great. And our strategy was we wanted to build a category. We wanted to be part of building a category. So we invited Six Sense, Engagio, Demand Base. All of our competitors have sponsored all of our conferences. So what's exciting about that was all of these companies had to invested in building the category of ABM, and we love that. We even gave them all the stage and have them talk, because we own the narrative, and we wanted to bring all of them alongside on creating this big category, because we just knew that as long as the category is big enough, then everybody will have a larger stake in the there's enough to go around. Each one of us brings something different to the table, so that's great. So a lot of times I think companies shrunk because they're like, well, I don't want to open up my Pandora's box because there's so much goodness here. The reality is the market doesn't care. The market wants the best product to win, and the best product will win. If you're able to create that at a bigger level, they will actually give you premium. So what we saw was we were growing faster than most of our competitors, purely because everybody coming at the community knew that we were behind the problem. We are behind the movement. So it gave us an edge all along in the early, especially in the early days. And even if you read Gartner's Magic Quadrant, where they position Terminus and Six Sense and all of it, if you look at Terminus, it would say for last 5 years, because you have ran the Flip My Funnel conference, we have seen that you have helped build a category of it. So our thought leadership, our books, our podcast help build a category, and they acknowledge that, helping us to become a category leader.
How are you thinking in terms of differentiation? So today, if there's a company coming to the market and maybe they have no particular pre-existing affiliation towards you, and they're looking at you and competitive products, how are you thinking of winning that business over competitors?
The today we look at it in many different ways, because today we just don't have one product. We have like 5 different products rolled up into a platform, and we're trying to sell a much bigger suite. The deal size is no longer hundreds of bucks; it's like thousands, 100,000 bucks a year contract. So the deals and all of that has obviously changed, as it normally should and normally would. We look at the market and help customers find the best solution. In some cases, we have told customers, like, if you need that specific thing, we don't have it, and we don't plan to build it right now. Our focus is purely on this, and if this is what you want, we would be the best at this, no questions asked. But if you want that, you might actually want to choose there and then come back later if you want this. We have no problem. I've always encouraged that. As a matter of fact, if you ever hear any of my sales teams, this is where they kind of cringe a little bit. Every call that I'm on, and I'm typically at least one call a day with a customer, or either an existing customer or a future customer, and I will tell them straight up, you don't even need an account-based marketing platform to do what you need to do. And it always takes people off the guard, because they're like, what? And they lose the, lower their guard, because they're like, look, I'm going to give you the best practice of doing account-based marketing. You use the team framework, you look at your target accounts, you figure out how you want to engage, where they engage, you activate your sales team, and here are the few ways to do it, and here's how you measure it. Now, you can do all that stuff without Terminus, without Sixth Sense, without any of these tools. No, because these are very simple things to do. Now, if you use any of these tools, it's just going to make things faster for you. It's going to be connected, so the technology is there, so you can do all these things much faster and be able to see results, and be able to iterate on it much quicker. But if you want to just do smarter marketing and smarter B2B, you don't need that. And that has always been our philosophy. We're not trying to jam our product on somebody in through somebody's throat. We're just giving them best practices and let them choose for themselves. People are smart; they can make decisions.
You mentioned today that you have 5 products. So why did you decide to expand the product portfolio, and what was the strategic, thinking behind it, and why those 5 products?
Well, it lands that question really lands into the third book I've written, published last year, called Move, the 4 question go to market framework. And what's interesting about that question is that companies go through these standard stages. And if somebody's listening to this right now, this might be a pen and paper time, because you could draw this. Companies go through what I believe are 3 stages, and we describe that in the book quite a bit: problem market fit, product market fit, and platform market fit. So when you're in a problem market fit, what that means is, you're trying to figure out if the problem is real, if somebody's going to pay us money, is there a market for real? And at that time, you're just trying to get more customers faster. So you focus on what every company typically in that stage focuses on: ARR, which is annual recurring revenue, getting more customers faster, right? As you get to the product market fit stage, that's when you have now customers that are longer than a year. So guess what? Retention becomes really, really important. So now you're looking at not only how fast you get new customers, you start looking at how more customers, how many customers we retain. What is our GRR, our gross retention rate? GRR becomes your most important metric. And we were there in our third year, fourth year of our business. And then as companies move from product to platform, which is what we did, we're going from a single product company to a multi-product company, which is a platform. Your even market expands. You stop selling just to one type of buyer, you sell to multiple types of buyers. So your product went from to platform, your market even expanded. Now what's important for you is called NRR, net retention rate, which means how much more wallet share can you have from your existing customers? Can you expand within existing customers, because your TAM all of a sudden starts focusing on that? So to me, it's a natural evolution of businesses. Is you go from problem to product to platform, you go from focusing all in on ARR to GRR to NRR. And as you think about any healthy business now, if you look at anything, you would see that NRR over 100% is something that they focus on. So instead, I would take a month where our ARR is not as high as it needed to be, but if the NRR drops below 100%, that's a problem. That's a Because as the business becomes bigger, every time you lose a customer, every time the customer is buying from somebody else, you're just losing a lot of opportunity, and it shows in the numbers in a big way. So it's just a natural progression of company growth.
You guys probably plan to be around, 5 years, 10 years, and beyond. So, what are the moats you are building, looking into the future?
That's a good question. I feel like we still want to continue to own the narrative, which is why we have written created frameworks like FlipMyFunnel is a framework, Team is a framework, Move is a framework, the 3Ps, the product, problem, product, platforms. So we are constantly, we're educators first. We help everybody to learn the best practices around it, and we are technology second, meaning we are helping people to do that in a faster, more efficient way. And it doesn't mean that technology is not important. It means that we recognize the need for strategy over execution. Like, you got to have that strategy first viewpoint. In many ways, we also want to continue to create an ecosystem around this. Like, and again, that's very natural. Now that we have multiple products, people want to hook up and have integrated ABM campaigns where somebody can send an email, then they see an ad, then they get a direct mail, then they see a call coming in. People want to see that whole conversation, the journey, the buyer journey. All together. So we want to feel we feel like we are best positioned to develop something like that. And that's really, I think, a combination of educating first and giving a journey builder sort of way where they can drive their business forward is where we want to focus on for the next decade.
So it's been what 8 years since you started the company. W- Along the over the years, you've picked up lessons learned.
Yeah.
So if you had to give 3 to 5 pieces of advice to fellow B2B SaaS founders, what would that advice be?
Well, one would be that being intentional is way more important than being brilliant. And to unpack that real quick is that you can have the best ideas in the world, but if you're not aligned, it doesn't really matter. It really doesn't matter if my team and we were not aligned on Flip My Funnel as the thing, and we created everything around it. We would have been noise. We wouldn't have that clear differentiation out there in the marketplace. We would just have been buried with like 8,000 other B2B SaaS tech companies get buried every year. So the idea is that you got to be intentional about what you want to do, and where you want to focus on and what your point of view is. It's way more important than just being brilliant and coming up with something new every single day. It doesn't help. You rather take one thing and be intentional about it. That's one. Maybe the other thing that I'm a big fan is I've been quoted for this too many times not to own it, is that you got to have forcing functions in your organization, in your life. So I think about forcing functions like flip my funnel events. Those are forcing functions. It forced us to have our product ready faster. It forced us to have our narrative put together. It forced us to have the salespeople have their conversation talk track ready. It forced marketing to have their collateral ready. So everybody was forced to have some sort of deliverable without even asking them, because we had a compelling event happening. Well, did we have to do 4 events? No, nobody said that. Nobody's charter says that. But we did that. And to me, that was a way of creating a sense of urgency in the organization that forced people to take action and have bias towards action in some way. So forcing functions is the big one, that creates sense of urgency. The other part is, um, I think we talked about this earlier, but in a different context. I think Frank had his book somewhere here. Frank, who is the CEO of Snowflake, he wrote a book recently called Amp Up, and I was reading it, and he talked about the fact that execution is greater than strategy. And it took me a moment to realize what he was saying as I read through the rest of it. And his point was, look, your strategy, you can sit around and come up with a strategy, and that's great, but the best strategy comes from relentless and ruthless execution. You keep executing, see what doesn't work, and you iterate, and you come up with something new, and all of a sudden that becomes your strategy. And before you know, you can't really see the difference between the execution part left and strategy began, or where vice versa. And I think he was just trying to say that, look, companies need to really, and people need to, and founders need to understand that 95% of the decisions they will make are probably not they're all reversible. It's you may make a wrong decision, and you go this path, and then you shift and go this path. But the idea that you don't make decisions, that you don't move fast, or you don't take action, that's unacceptable, because that will kill your business. So those are the three things that I'll offer up.